back to another amazingly awesome fuck-sucking episode of the Moonshine Militia podcast. As you can see, we are here today. I guess I'm foreshadowing. Today, we are joined by none other than Bill Cluck, the most loved member of the Moonshine Militia podcast.
And whiskey.
My
My new
What's
still
going on,
hand.
Whiskey? Doing all right?
Whiskey's only 8 weeks old.
Oh, look at that. So that, whiskey is going to make you actually make everybody love you because of whiskey.
That's why you get a dog. Make you lovable.
All right, so let's dive into this here real quick. As you know, what we do is, this is short form. We just go through some questions, ask you a few things, and we just see, how things roll.
And then you chop it up later, make me look ridiculous, and you get good ratings, right?
Well, what we hope for is that you do that on your own, and I don't have to chop it up.
Okay. I'll try my best to embarrass myself.
I'm talking to Bill Cluck, so that shouldn't be too difficult.
If you didn't hate me before, you'll hate me now.
All right, first question here. What initially sparked your interest in making liquor or distilling?
Well, the first time that I was like 9 years old working with my uncles. I didn't know what the heck they were doing. I found out much, much later on that they were all alcoholics and they were making their own brew in the back. I had no idea. All I was doing was tending a fire on what I found out was later a nice big still. This was up in Minnesota, so it wasn't like they were making great shine. Okay, just a lot of corn up there, so they were making a bunch of corn shine. Isanti, Minnesota. So nobody ever heard of it. It's not on the Moonshine map. It's certainly not on the Moonshine Trail.
Minnesota.
Yeah, but that was the first time I was exposed. The next time I was exposed was in I was either 19 or 20, maybe 20 or 21. I was stationed in the Army. I was stationed in Germany, and these guys were making brandy, but I had no idea. They told me they were making wine, but they, again, I was an idiot. I didn't even know how alcohol was made back then, and I was helping this guy make his wine, and then he was distilling brandy out of it, and it was damn good. It was damn good. But yeah, I didn't really get into doing it myself until about 5 years ago.
Wow.
Maybe 6. That's when I decided to do it myself.
Decided. What was the first thing that you decided to try and make?
I made UGSSM. It was easy. It doesn't take any real skill. You don't have to cook anything. It's a sugar shine with a corn flavor. And it is amazing how people like it,
Yeah.
But I must have made, I don't know, I made 20 or so batches of it before. It's way too much of a commitment, because you have to start it over. Once it's done, you got to start over again. And I liked it, and I ended up with, I don't even know how much, probably 5-6 gallons of the stuff, and giving it mostly away. Again, people loved it, but then I started getting into grains and fruits, and I haven't done much with fruits, but I mostly grain now.
I've been hearing a lot about that. What is it? UJSSM?
Uncle Jesse's Simple Sour Mash.
I had never heard about it really until I remember somebody mentioned it, and I was like, "What the hell is that?"
Yeah, well, you see this still back here. I got this from North Georgia 4 or 5 years ago. It's my second or third still, but I got it from them, and it came with a recipe for I don't know if they called it UJSSM, but it was a simple corn mash, cold mash, but I don't know what they called it. But cold mashing, when people talk about cold mashing, it's the same thing. It's a Uncle Jesse's Simple Sour Mash, and all it really is you know what it is, right?
Yeah, now I do.
Yeah. It was big a number of years ago, but a lot of people are still making it.
Oh yeah, I've seen a lot of people now when they first starting out. There were a lot of people like, just try this, just do it. It's easy. Just try doing it. Yeah.
And it can be a little harsh. It's a little harsh when you first make it, but as it turns out, if you let it sit for a year, it really tones down, and it has good corn flavor. It's surprising, for a sugar shine, how much corn flavor you can get out of it. Of course, it depends on how you do it. Anything.
Now, and I know you do something a little bit different with your blending. Walk me through that real quick.
So I've been making a lot of different recipes, right? I did a George Washington rye. I've done popcorn's recipe, and they all came out fairly decent, right? The challenge is that when you have a small still, I actually have 5 stills now, but when you have a small still and you're making grains, you're really locked in for a long period of time, right? It takes several weeks, in order to when you're not running constantly. To me, this is a hobby. It
Yeah.
takes weeks to get ready to make a mash, do a mash, and then finally distill it, and then of course age it. And just I don't have the patience for that. But I'd locked into dozens and dozens of different recipes. But you really only start getting good when you start doing one thing over and over again. So I really started making high rye whiskeys, because I love rye. But then I came across the idea of somebody mentioned a wheated bourbon, so I thought I would try it. And the recipe that I came up with is 6 parts corn, one part rye, 1 part barley, and either 2 or 3 parts wheat. And everyone just absolutely loves it, right? So I must have made 20 gallons of that shit. Good stuff. But if I'm doing something else, once you've made it, you can't really do anything with it. I wanted to experiment with different levels of rye, different levels of wheat, but then you're locked in for many, many weeks. So I came up with this idea, and I saw it somewhere, of making simple or single grain whiskeys and then blending them later. And that's how Canadian whiskeys made, right? They make a bunch of single grain. So, and I love a good Crown. So I figured, why don't I try that? And it gave me the flexibility to really try any recipe that I wanted on the fly, right? And I don't have to lock into several gallons of one thing. If I wanted to make a pint of something, I could make a pint of something. So right now I probably got 10, 12 gallons of corn. I've got of corn whiskey aged, ready to go at 120. I've got 5, 6 gallons of rye, 4 or 5 gallons of barley, and who knows, 10 gallons of wheat whiskey. And at any given time, if I want to just make a pint of something, I can put it together, and it's all aged the same way, all at 120 proof. I can put it together, proof it down to 80 or 90, and I've got something. And so now I can try any type of recipes that I like.
Wow. And how much do you have how much do you have on hand sitting around that you can go ahead and do that with?
Well, like I said, I've got 10, 12 gallons of corn and 5 or 6 gallons of rye, 4 or 5, 6 gallons of barley, and I don't know, 10 gallons of wheat. I keep them in those big glass 5-gallon carboys. I got a bunch of them in the back.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. You started talking. I looked down at your coffee.
He's much more interesting. But it's the flexibility, Damon. The flexibility of being able to do anything I want. I don't have to put the wheat in it. If I wanted to just make it, I could make a George Washington rye right now. The problem is, like I did with my very first George Washington rye, I aged it. I didn't know that it was served, that it was sold clear, right? And so everything I have now is aged. So now I'm going. I've got a couple of 100 pounds of cracked corn around here. I'm going to make just a bunch of White Lightning, basically white dog liquor. And just corn, just straight corn. Some of it I'll age, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But this few drops that I've got, that's the last of my corn liquor, and I'm drinking it here on the Militia Podcast.
Nice, good for you.
It's gone, man.
It's like drinking liquor at like 1 o'clock for you. Jeez,
this is late, man. You should see it on the run it calls, man. We're drinking all the time. That starts at noon on the West Coast. It's 3 o'clock on the East Coast.
Jeepers creepers. That's rough. All right. So
you made one of those calls, didn't you?
I think so.
Yeah.
I want to say I did.
We've been having those calls for about 4 years now. Even before there was a Run It page, we were having the calls, right? I had a group on Reddit called Alcohol Appreciation, it was an e-group about 10 years ago. This is even before I was distilling. And then about 5 years ago, we converted it over to a Reddit group. And then we converted it to 3 years ago, we converted to the Run It group on Facebook. So we've been doing these calls for many, many years. We do twice a week, man. Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern and Saturday at noon Eastern.
Wow. I'm going to have to try to get on the next one. See if I can get drunk.
We have a good time. we got some shiners. I don't know. I think you know Frank Lodgson, right?
I think so. The name sounds familiar.
Frank is like 76, 77, 78,
yeah.
something like that. He's been shining since he was 9 years old. And he is a fixture. I've been lucky enough. I travel around quite a bit, and I've been able to see a lot of people. Frank is one of them. Last summer, I went and visited him. We got drunk on his porch on my weeded bourbon. I'm proud to say my weeded bourbon kicked Frank's ass. He got up. He was gonna go show me something. He got up. I got up. He fell backwards off of his porch. He got up. His glasses were broken. He was all bloody. That's what a good shine does to you. Frank's a great guy. Love
I remember that. Jeepers creepers. All right. Now, so what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced with distilling?
Getting kicked out of a lot of groups.
Now, is that due to distilling?
It's actually it's most of it. I mean, the very first group I got kicked out of was, what is it called? Homedistilling.com. They're not even a Facebook group. Everybody gets kicked out of that group. Yeah. So, when I really wanted to be serious about the hobby, and I messed around beforehand, but you don't learn on your own. It's not like I have a mentor. I'm up here in Washington State. I don't have a mentor. So, you have to ask around and find around. And I came across homedistiller.com, and a couple of guys there really, really nice. But a couple of guys are just super assholes. You ask a question, which is a way you do research, right? Find out a bunch of opinions, right? Because nothing we have is, we have solid facts, we have science, but a lot of the recipes and techniques are just built up over time. So I'm trying to find out, and that's how one of the ways I do research. And you don't get good research by going on Google, right? You get a bunch of bullshit going on Google. So you really should talk to people. But some of the people initially on homedistiller.com are like, fuck you, do your own research. Now, I never, ever, anybody who knows me and knows where to find me on all these groups that got kicked out, go back and find out when I got kicked out. I never started a fight, ever. What I do start is I ask questions. And by asking those questions, it challenges people's beliefs. And when you challenge someone's beliefs, they get belligerent. And when they start calling me names and all this other shit, it's not that I started that. It's that I was challenging their beliefs, but only by asking a question. So that initially, the hardest part is research, right? Because nobody has the exact setup you have, right? They may have all the same components, right? But you're sitting it down differently. You have a different electrical setup. You have different propane setup. You might have natural gas. You have different lengths of lines. Even, just a small still behind me, right? The way you set your cap, if you set it high, you're going to get a little higher proof. If you set it level, you're going to get a different proof. You set it lower, you're going to get a lower proof. People don't realize that. And everything is different. So people say, well, how come I'm doing this and I'm getting this result? Well, how do I know? You haven't given everything about your setup, right? And you haven't said how many runs you've done. You haven't told us everything about your recipe. You're just doing something that you think you're doing the same way and getting a different result. So, the research is the hardest part. Research to give you, mentorship. And that's one of the reasons that the calls are so important, because we can talk about how this recipe is playing itself out. Not only this time where you got a weird result, but every other time when you didn't get weird results, or, the first time when you thought you got a great result, and then a year later you go back and taste that shine and it tastes like shit. But the same recipe today seems to taste so much better. You know why? Because you're getting better at it.
Yeah. There's a lot of groups that I guess you could say, if you haven't been kicked out of a group for asking questions, then you're not doing something right. That's.
I would agree with that. Certainly.
I've been kicked out of a lot of groups for asking. I guess a lot of people would say are asking simple questions. I know when I first started, there was a lot of groups. There was a lot of groups that I left because I would ask questions and they would act that way.
Mm-hmm.
Act belligerent, and they'd start, oh, do your research, and I'm like,
yeah,
what the fuck do you guys have a group for? And I'm here. Your group's called Moonshiners for Beginners. What the fuck?
But there's one opinion, and they only let that one opinion, proliferate. I don't know the word. Proliferate throughout, and that's bad. Like the all grain group is like that, right? I got kicked out of the all grain group because somebody else asked about adding some sugar. He got jumped on immediately. I said, hey, man, give the guy a break. We all use sugar, whether it comes from grain or sugar or fruit or whatever. Boom, I was out.
They were just waiting for you to wait. Bill Cluck said something. Boom, he's out.
Boom, boom, I'm out. Well, I'm actually in. I've got several personas out there on the internet, and I'm in a lot of those groups. I'm telling you, there's very little value in those groups that have one point of view, right?
Yeah.
Groups like the militia, like playing Grain to Shine and Run It. You know, we all have different setups. We all have different opinions, and we allow those, as long as people are being respectful, we allow that to, you know, those opinions to be given. Now, I don't agree with everything, but I'm not going to tell a man he's wrong because he got a certain result, because I don't know how he got that result. You know, someone could say, I use 1 pound of corn per gallon and I'm getting 15%. Now, could that happen? Sure. But if you use a lot of sugar or you put a lot of other shit in there, but he didn't say that. So I'm not going to challenge somebody who has something on the surface that doesn't look right, you know, because that just starts a fight. So.
Yeah, it does. And we all know where that leads.
I know.
All right. Now, are there any special, unique techniques or anything that you've taken into your arsenal that you've started using on a regular basis?
Yeah, one of the techniques that I use, and I got this from Michael Hatley. Yeah, he lives in Texas. He's got the Just Plain Grain and Shine group, but he's been a long running member of Run It. He mentioned doing mesquite wood, right? So. Yeah, I age on mesquite regularly. Now, I know he tends to age on 100% mesquite. I found that, well, it wasn't bad, right? It just wasn't a profile I was looking for. It's very, very strong, very, very smoky. The liquor turns out very, very dark, and I think he's still got 5 gallons of it that is still aging after maybe 2 years at this point on mesquite wood. It's kind of funny because I think who was it? Craig and his brother. Who's Craig's brother? Craig Landry.
Richard.
Yeah, Richard Landry and Craig. So Richard was on the call and Craig came in. This is just recently, and we had, you know, he was talking on the Run It call, and we were talking, and I said, "Hey, Michael was on the phone." I said, "Hey, you gotta get a taste of Michael's mesquite liquor." Now I don't know what the base is. It's probably corn shine, and he damn near choked. Just because it's very strong and it's not an expected profile that you expect, right? I haven't tasted Michael's liquor, so I'm not going to say it's bad. In fact, I'm probably pretty sure it's pretty damn good. But anyway, the 100% mesquite wood is just way too strong for me, way too pungent, if you will. Some people like that. So what I've done is I age everything on oak, but I'm doing an 80-20 mix, 80% oak. 20% mesquite. I do 100 grams of chips per gallon. And then so I'll do that ratio. If I'm doing 5 gallons, I'll do that same ratio, 80-20. And I get super results. In like 3 to 4 weeks, I get a super, super red-brown coloring, and I get a really, really fantastic smoky flavor. And I do that with everything. Now, if I'm doing a brandy, like an apple brandy or a cherry brandy or something, I'll use cherry woods. Hickory is the only one I haven't found that I really like, but I've been trying maple wood. There's another wood, like some ambrosia or something. I don't know what it is. It's somebody sent me something to try. I just haven't had a chance to try yet. But the big technique that I use is 80-20 mesquite, and then depending on the type of either brandy or if I want to try something different in a liquor, I'll try either a cherry, which really, really has a super sweet taste to it, or apple, which apple wood kind of imparts a green apple flavor. Which is pretty good too.
Yep. That what's not the ambrosia? It's called it
starts with an A. It starts with an A.
Yeah, it lends a lot of cinnamon flavor to liquor.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called now, but yeah, somebody sent me one. I got some.
That's why it's not more popular, because nobody can remember what it is. But I've heard it gives great results, and it's probably really expensive too.
You can only use it for it's like it's one of the short-term thing. You don't if you overuse it. I mean, if you leave it in for too long, it's terrible. It's like over oaking. You know, you can't. It's like it's terrible.
So that's another thing that I learned early on is, people want to reuse chips or reuse their barrels. You can't see it, and I've got a 5-gallon barrel here that I've used a couple of times. You can really over oak, and you've gotten rid of all of the vanillas and all the flavors that come out at the higher end of the alcohol. It really starts to get tannic, really, really bad. So I never, I'm a cheap guy, man. I'll save a nut and a bolt, and believe me, I find uses for those nuts and bolts. But I'm cheap. I like to reuse whatever I possibly can. But the one thing I won't reuse is wood.
Yep. Okay. Yep. All right. Now, what's one thing that you like to do to ensure quality in your end products time and again?
Quality to me is all about consistency, right? Doing the same thing over and over and over again. Now, you may tweak it a little bit to get it better and better and better. But what I've been doing lately is, there's a myth out there that to run low and slow means you got a slow drip going, drip,
Yeah.
drip, drip. George used to say drip, drip, spurt, drip, drip, spurt. That's not the case. I find, if you're making a vodka or something, and I've made vodkas on my Beaver, and you get them out at 192 proof all day
Yeah.
long. That's a great vodka, great quality vodka, has zero flavor to it. What I find is when I was distilling at the drip, 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 spurt, whatever, I was getting 165, 170, and everybody's real proud of that. Oh, I'm getting 160, 170 off of my still. Everybody's proud of that. But I think you're missing out on flavor. What I do now is when my foreshots start coming off, I will turn the burner down so that I'm getting like 165, 170, but only for about a shot glass. And then, off of a 5-gallon still, I'll take a shot glass of 4s, and then I crank it up a bit. And I have a refractometer, so I know exactly when it's coming off at 145. And that's what I've been doing lately is it comes off at 145, and I'm getting super flavor at that level, right? Because I'm not burning off or I'm not leaving a lot of water behind, and it's bringing the flavors over. And then I cut it off at about 110. So all my hearts come through 145 to 110, and then I crank up the heat, take all the tails, and I put those tails back in the next run. So that's how I'm ensuring consistency, and I'm doing that with all of the single grains that I'm doing now. I do it pretty much the same. I come off at 165, 170, kill the 4s, start it at 145, make sure I monitor for my heads, and then my hearts, I'm making sure I get it, above 110. Once it gets below 110, you start to get a little tailsy. Well, since I'm going to reuse those tails anyway, I'm not wasting any liquor. I'm just, burning quickly through the rest of my run because I'm just going to pump that back into my still later.
Yeah, nice.
Right, Whiskey? Right? See, he knows. He's only 8 weeks old. He knows.
Is that a little terrier? Is that what he is?
Rat terrier.
Yeah, a little rat terrier.
Yeah, man, they have super sharp teeth up front. That's for like grabbing the rat's tail and smashing it back and forth.
Look at that. Sheep. So cute.
He's exhausted. We just went out for an hour walk, so he's exhausted.
He's gonna sleep there for a while. Now, has moonshining or making liquor at all, or distilling, changed your life or your worldview at all?
I could initially say no to that, but what is interesting is I am very shocked. My worldview that I had of people who were outlaws, people who were shiners, people who regularly kind of skirted the law. I had a kind of a higher opinion of them. I'm very conservative. I'm really not into government intervention in any part of our lives. So I figured these guys would be a little tougher than it turns out they are. So my worldview is a lot of shiners are just pussies, man. They get butthurt so easily. Oh man, you talked about my pawpaw. So what? I don't even know your pawpaw. Okay.
Yeah, my heritage. Did I say that out loud? Sorry, I didn't mean that.
That's pretty funny. But that's the only real worldview. I mean, I don't have anything against moonshine, or I haven't really changed for or against it. I'm a little surprised what the general public thinks about moonshine. When I tell people they'll come over to my house and I pour them, I reuse a lot of bottles, right? I don't have any sitting around right now. They're all over there. But I'll reuse a whiskey bottle, like a Woodford bottle, and I'll pour them a drink, and they'll say, "Oh man, this is really nice." And I'll say, "Yeah, it's my own moonshine. I made it myself." a lot of people are just all of a sudden afraid. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go blind. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get Jake leg. You know, no, you don't realize that, you know, a good moonshiner has, you know, if you're taking the foreshots out and if you're taking the heads out, you know, you're not going to have any problem with that shine. It's going to be better than commercial whiskey.
Oh, yeah.
So those are the two worldviews that I don't know if it's changed, but I'm more laser focused on, you know, what they are.
Yep. Now, to you, what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of being a distiller?
Being a moonshiner, I would say the most rewarding aspect is this is literally the motto of the Moonshiner Run It group, right? The freedom that comes with creating your own beverage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I really enjoy the hell out of that. I haven't bought any commercial liquor in the past at least 5 years, probably maybe a little longer, but I haven't bought one drop of it. And I'll tell you, and a lot of shiners won't tell you this, I've made some shitty liquor, right? I've made, you know, everybody likes it, right? When it comes off the still, and believe me, it's all drinkable, right? But when you go back and you drink something a year ago that you thought it was pretty damn good, and and think about this, it has mellowed over the course of that year, but then you compare it to the stuff you're making now. The little tweaks that you make by making the same recipe over and over and over again, you get better and better and better at it. And yeah, so that's why when everyone's trying, oh, I got to try that recipe, I got to try this recipe. It's, why don't you perfect your own damn recipe first?
Yeah.
And when I mean perfect, I mean make 100 runs of it or something, or make 50 runs of it. You know, it's this still, it's one of five. Off of this still in the past 5 years or 4 years, I've made 200 runs off of it. 200. Now I've made a lot of different ones, but I've made at least 35 or 40 runs of the single grains. And I'm really liking what I'm getting off of that.
Yeah, that's been one of my biggest I'd say things is trying to find that one recipe that I really like enough to continuously do it over and over and over and over again. And I think I finally found one, but it's just now just continuously do it over and over. And then, you know, people here's 50 pounds of this. Try this. What am I going to do with 50 pounds?
Blue corn. That's a big thing, right? Jimmy Red, you know. Okay, 50 pounds is not enough to learn enough about the grain to do something with. You need a constant supply of it, you know, especially if you got a larger still. You know, 50 pounds, you know, if you got a 15-gallon still, that you're lucky to, you know, be able to use all that in there. I mean, you use it all up. You're doing one run.
Yeah. So that's why, you know, I somebody gives me a bag of something, I'll be like, okay, I'll do a couple runs on it. And I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. I might end up turning into something. I don't know. But it's
like somebody giving you a cigar. Like someone can, I got you a Cuban cigar. Okay. I've never liked Cuban cigars. Okay. They're very strong. And everyone that someone's given me is usually dried out because they kept it in their fucking suitcase for 3 weeks. But what I know about cigars, and I've been smoking cigars since I was like 16 years old, you've got to smoke a whole box to know anything about that type of cigar. One cigar ain't going to do it. 2 cigars ain't going to do it because it's the consistency or quality over the course of a box. You know, if you smoke cigars, you know the worst thing you can get is a run down the side. The second worst thing you can get is just a big knot in there that you can't draw it at all, right? And those things will happen even in what you think is a good cigar. And that's the same in moonshine. You can make good moonshine, all of a sudden something's bad. Something's wrong. My ferment, what happened? I do my ferments the same all the time. All of a sudden, I've got shit all over my floor. What happened? Or all of a sudden, there's oil. You know, I'm getting oil off of it. You know, it's the learning that you get from doing the same thing over and over again. And really, the thing I'm most proud of is my wheated bourbon. It's, you know, that, and believe it or not, just straight corn whiskey is the 2 most popular things that friends like. And I really love when I give somebody a jar or I give someone a bottle and then they ask me for more, right? The worst thing that a shiner can see is if you give somebody a jar and you go to their house 6 months later and it's still sitting on the shelf. You know? You can try it, man.
Or they re-gift it back to you and you're like, oh, wait, this is mine. Oh, I'm sorry.
Here's something else that a lot of, you know, especially because the internet has really gotten a lot of people out there, you know, trying moonshine. people don't know what real moonshine tastes like,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
What is coming off the of your worm, and if you have nobody else around you, or you have no way to check it out or compare it to something, you don't know. You just don't know. So you either like it or you don't, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can't go. I've got a little tiny bottle of this shit old smoky moonshine, awful stuff, right? Commercial
Yep.
moonshine. That's not what moonshine tastes like. But I've been able to see people like Everett Mullins and Frank Lodgson and some other people that I go visit. Then you taste their moonshine, taste their corn moonshine, and you know exactly what it's supposed to taste like. So when my moonshine tastes like their moonshine, I know I'm onto something.
Yeah. Good. Now, have you ever faced any legal challenges at all with making liquor?
No, I can't say that I have. Some people say they go to Costco and they're buying a bunch of Mason jars and someone gives them the eye, or you go to someplace and buy a bunch of grain, or buy a bunch of sugar. I've never had any problems like that. I've never had any problems with the law. Now, a lot of my distilling I do in Missouri, where it's legal, right? Because I got a place in Missouri. Up here in Washington State, nobody really cares. If you're a hobby distiller, you shouldn't really have to worry about it. If you're out there trying to sell 400 or 500 gallons of it, yeah, you're going to be in trouble with a whole lot of people, because moonshining is a tax crime, right? It's not a health crime. It's a tax crime. You're not paying the tax on it. So whoever's taxing that liquor is going to want their piece of it. But me, a few gallons here and there, and I'm giving it away. Nobody's losing out because I'm not buying their store-bought liquor,
Yep.
or getting mine taxed. So yeah, I haven't had any issues. You worry about it in the early days, but if someone's going to be a real dick, and Michael Hatley used to be a cop. That alone got him kicked off of a couple of moonshine groups just because he used to be a cop. But I think he had a really good perspective on it. He says, "Man, most cops just want some."
Yeah. I get a little. Yeah. Got stories about that, I tell you. Now, do you have any hopes and dreams for the future of moonshining?
Well, it would one of my dreams, I guess, would be that it is federally isn't a crime anymore. And I think there was a federal judge that had said that somewhere.
Yeah, out of Texas.
Yeah. So who knows? We may end up getting there. I know a lot of shiners love the hobby and they dream of going legal. I had a glimpse of that, a couple of years ago. But who wants to get in bed with the government? Who wants them counting every piece of cracked corn that happens to come into my garage, or wherever I happen to be? Nobody. I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And even when I've been on the whiskey trail and been to several distilleries, I see the amount of paperwork that they have to keep together. They're not doing that for business purposes. They're doing it for tax purposes.
Yeah.
And the government doesn't give a shit how much whiskey you sell. They care about how much you make. So in a 55-gallon barrel, they're taxing you on 55 gallons. That barrel is in there for 10, 12 years. There ain't 55 gallons in there. Okay.
Yeah.
There's likely 30, 35 if you're lucky.
Yeah. As long as they get their tax money.
That's right.
Damn it. Taxation is theft, by the way.
It is. Especially in that, if you can directly attach a tax to a service, I get it. Okay. But when they start taxing and start spreading the money all over, well, they're basically lying about this so that they can do that.
Well, they want you to pay the tax on the goods you're buying. They want you to pay a tax on the product that you're making, and they want you to pay a tax on the actual sale of the product that you're selling. So you're like double, triple, quadruple taxing you.
Oh hell! And then if you're making an income from it, they want a tax on your income too.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you actually tried, even moonshine, if you tried to figure out how much you're actually paying in taxes for everything, you couldn't figure it out. It's just way too confusing, and it starts to add up very, very quickly, even when you're not paying the extra taxes that they want you to pay. That's true on everything. It's not just on moonshine. If you could be making jelly, it doesn't matter. The taxes just add up.
They do. Now, so if there's anything that you could wish that people out there that are not in the moonshine community, the normies out there, that you could wish that they could understand about the people in the moonshine community, what would that be?
I would say most of them are decent people, right? I mean, people who are generally thought of as outlaws by normal people are people that are kind of on the edge of society. I don't really believe. I may have even believed that myself, 5, 10 years ago. But I don't think it's true now. I mean, I've had through the internet, through the militia page and through the militia podcasts or the shit show calls and the run it calls we've had and all the exposure that you and I both get to hundreds of people out there, normal people, normal jobs. No, not everybody out there is trying to screw the government out of tax money, right? People are they're having, it's like a woodworker, somebody who just enjoys working on wood. You get good at something, you enjoy something, you're a normal person. And that's, I would say, and most of us have all of our teeth.
Most.
There's a couple out there.
And most of us have most of our senses too.
I would say 99%.
Well, if there was one piece of advice that you had to give to somebody that is new and they wanted to get into moonshining, making liquor, what would it be?
Get a mentor. Find somebody that you trust. You can look around. I mean, there's nothing wrong with buying some equipment and trying stuff. But there, the old episodes of Moonshiner, they used to give a lot of good information, right? I mean, they would give you a diagram of a still. And nowadays you can stop that shit and write that down,
Yep.
They don't do that anymore. The last 4 or 5 seasons, they are giving, I would say, not necessarily bad information, but they're misdirecting their information.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they're doing it. I don't think it's because they're going to get in trouble by giving good information. Nobody gets in trouble for that. I don't think that they want people to try it on their own because they're going to realize that it's not that hard to make good liquor, and it's not that much harder to make great liquor, right? Yeah. But find so try it, but you're going to find it very difficult to find all the information, even asking in the groups. But find yourself a mentor, someone who's done it for a period of time, somebody you trust, and just have them work through it with you. I have a lot of people that I work with. I know a lot of people in the Reddit groups and the militia groups and Plain Grain and Shine. Those, there's a lot of people out there that have kind of latched onto somebody. Those are the people who learn quickly because they're able to actually get something done. We all know somebody who literally went out there and bought a 50-gallon still gun. I'm going to get into this, and never made one run of liquor. Because a 50-gallon still is way too big for a beginner. Hell, a 10 or a 15-gallon is too big for a beginner.
Yeah, that's huge, man. No,
take you all weekend to run that damn thing.
Yeah, that's huge. I went over there and saw, Tom's 50. He had that. I was like, damn, that's a lot. That's a lot, dude.
Yeah. I had a 20-gallon that I ran with a partner of mine early on, and 5 years ago. It was just too damn big, and because it was so big, we didn't run it a lot. And when you don't run it a lot, you're not consistent with anything, and ended up sitting for 4 or 5 months at a time. And so I scaled back to a 10-gallon, and even the 10-gallon was just too much to run. I found that I've got a bunch of 5-gallon stills now, and they're all different types. I've got electric, I've got gas, I've got copper, I've got stainless. I've got a couple of air stills. One for water, one for alcohol. It's real, and those are both gallon stills, right? So, and I love to use those for experimenting with different types of recipes because you can run through it quick, man. You can ferment a gallon of something. It takes you almost no time at all. What do you get out of it? Yeah, a pint and a half, 2 pints, whatever. That's okay. You know what it is. But I love my 5-gallon stills, man. I can get that thing up and running and get done in 4 hours. Because I mean, if you ran it the same drip, I used to take 10 hours. The first time I ran a 5-gallon still, and that was another problem with the bigger stills, is I was running them way too slow, right? You run a high proof liquor, and then you're wondering, well, where's all of my flavor, right? Even in the smaller stills, drip. But when I finally realized that if I took down the proof a little bit by turning up the heat, and you get more flavor, then I can run the 4s and the heads. I'm running a little differently. Then I run the hearts completely different. Then I crank it up for the tails and burn through all that. And I'm using all of that liquor for some. Even the 4s I use. I kill weeds, start fires. Use every. I'm cheap as hell. I use every drop because I know what it takes to get a drop.
Yep.
So that's what I would say. You know, that'd be my advice. Find somebody who is going to be, you know, be your mentor, and you'll learn by doing the same thing over and over again. And quit switching. Don't switch this recipe, that recipe. I'll make this for a buddy of mine because he's not going to want it anyway.
Yeah.
Make something you like, and other people will end up liking it too.
Yeah, just because you like it enough.
Yep.
That's good advice. Good advice. Well, Bill, that's all I got. Those are my questions.
This is a quick 42 minutes, man. Maybe it's only 40. You're gonna cut the first minute off.
Yeah, minute and what was it? Minute and
50.
10, I think. Minute 50.
No, it's about like a minute 50.
Was it? Yeah,
I was looking. I got it right on my screen here, man. And if you chop this shit up to make me look ridiculous, kudos to you, man.
I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. The only thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put John Miller's head right on your face.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say a butthole.
No, because that'll get me kicked off.
Operation Butthole will get you kicked off.
I'm so glad we didn't get to finish that because everybody would be kicked off.
Hey, I saw Phil on the shit show. He was using a different profile, right? His other profile still.
Yeah, he just uses his Philbilly. Well, that's because I was hosting.
Oh, okay.
If I'm hosting, he can join. He just can't use his Philip Lowe thing. That's all.
That was a funny story, man.
I'm telling you.
Hey, I appreciate. I know this has been a long time coming. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on, man. Damon, you're a good guy. I don't care how you spell your last name. 1 T, 2 T's. I don't give a shit. You do whatever you want.
Bill, I love you, brother.
I love you too.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me and letting me ask you these buggy questions and getting some information out of you. People wanted to know.
Right. And I haven't the militia group. I have not. No, I think I did get kicked out of it once. I did. I was kicked out of militia one time. I don't know who did it. Somebody did. Tom Crum let me back in.
Well, it's good to have you back.
All right, take care, brother.
All right. Till next time, everybody out there, have a good day. Love, peace, and chicken grease, baby. We'll talk to you later.